Welcome to Tennis Spin, where we put our spin on your tennis. Today, we're going to be talking about head. Prestige? Pre-prestige? Stay tuned. All right, guys, coffee sponsor of today is Jim Nguyen. Jim Nguyen writes, "Hey Harry, my dad watches your channel all the time. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind giving him a shout out. His name is Jim N from Syracuse. Thanks." All right, well, shout out to Jim Nguyen's father, Jim N from Syracuse. Have a great one. Your son loves you. And thanks for watching. All right. Cheers to you. If you want to be my coffee sponsor of the day, network is buymeacoffee.com/tennis spin. You want to just hook up the channel? Super thanks is the way. Link is below. Thank you guys so much. All right. Today, we got my buddy Eujin. We're going to be talking about pre-prestiges. You know, head prestige is very iconic in the head racket line. He and I were talking one day, and he started just rolling about, head before prestige, they couldn't call it prestige, and then it was this racket, and then it was that racket, and I'm like, whoa, I think we should share with everybody out there. So I called him up, and we're going to do a little bit of a history of the prestige for you today. Okay? Stay tuned. Hey guys, do you need a tennis buddy? Want some more tennis friends? Have you guys considered Player Court? You can find over 27,000 players out there, coaches and playing partners. That's playercourt.com/tennis spin. All right, guys, so Eugene and I were talking. This is my buddy Eugene, by the way. We're talking one day and about prestige, and then he started rambling on about basically when I started at the pro shop in 1989. So I worked at a pro shop in 1989.
So I was rambling on, so that's your way of telling me that I talk too much, which is fine.
No, but I was interested.
It's okay, my girlfriend says that too. So.
But I understand the rambling because it's something that you love. It's something that you understand. It's something that is dear to your heart. So just like me and pro staff, I know a little bit more about pro staff. When you started going off about these head rackets, I was like, man, you brought me back to 1989 through 1992. Because
well, Harry, we're about the same age, so I'm also a pro staff nerd, but that's a subject of a whole other video.
No, totally, and we can talk about that definitely in another video. The sore subject about these rackets for me was because I started stringing rackets in 1989, and these were like the worst rackets to string.
Oh, I know. I've strung a lot of these for myself for many, 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 many years.
So I'll bet we could share that. Literally, I would pull a brand new racket off, one of these ones, let's say, and as I'm stringing it, the grommets are snapping. They are brittle, and I am like, why? Why? I have to tube every freaking grommet. So that's what comes to my my memory. I did wind up with a green Elite Pro. That's what one of my first rackets. So
my doubles partner had that racket. Yeah, like that was a beautiful paint job. That's like one greatest
Boston
paint jobs.
Celtics green.
And I'm a Celtics fan, so there you go.
All right, so let's get in the subject here. When Eugene and I were talking about these old rackets, he was really rambling about how we progressed from pre-prestiges to prestiges. Now, I didn't know that Head couldn't use prestige, the name prestige. Tell me about what's going on that.
Yeah, so the launch year, which, and again, I'm not an expert, so this is all from memory, and I have a very distinct memory of the prestige in particular, because when I started playing tennis, I used a lot of head rackets, and not all of them represented here, some of them. But the Prestige was launched about 1987. I think if you can go dig up old issues of Tennis Magazine, there's an issue of Tennis Magazine 1987-ish when they did racket reviews and stuff. The racket that they reviewed, which was not called the Prestige, was this guy, the Head TXP.
TXP Pro.
Well, TXP. Well, it's the TXP. It's actually, if you see here, it's the TX Professional. So TXP actually is really, it's TXP. And it says Pro on the side because, well, when the Prestige was launched, the brown one, the original brown European Prestige, was the Prestige Pro. But Head could not use the name Prestige for some complicated legal reason in the U.S. market. So their plan B was literally the exact same racket, different paint job, this white paint job, which, mid to late 80s, white rackets were like a thing. The Prince Spectrum Comp, ceramic, the Wilson ceramic, Yamaha had a white racket. I mean, it was like a trendy thing, and they gave it a white paint job and called it TXP. There is a logic to that nomenclature as well, some of which is on this table, which we can kind of like go down that rabbit hole a little bit. One thing that I'm sure people who know better and can fact check, verify this, I always understood that the TX in TXP actually stood for Twaron.
Oh,
because
the material.
we know Prestige had Twaron in it, right? And if you look at the info
protection bumper
on the side of the racket, it actually tells you what the composition of this racket is. It's head tubular graphite, fiberglass, Twaron composite construction.
Twaron. Yes, it does.
Right? So
check it out, guys. Twaron, if you can see it. Maybe they can bring it up a little bit, but yeah.
So that was the big deal. And a lot of people who love Prestiges, love this magical Twaron.
What exactly is Twaron?
Who knows? It's like it's, racket company marketing, mumbo jumbo, right? It's like another name for another type of graphite that's,
sure.
But yeah, so that's why they could not call it Prestige, and they could not give it the same paint job as.
But they called it Prestige in Europe, you said, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. I didn't grow up in Europe. I also didn't grow up in the U.S. I grew up in Singapore, and for reasons I don't really understand, the rackets that we got in Singapore were U.S. market rackets. So the distributor in Singapore, was the official Head distributor, but they imported from the U.S.
Got it.
So that's why we got these guys, and I have a very distinct memory because I was in a junior program that was sponsored by Head, and this was the racket that they gave me.
Gotcha.
So,
very good.
So yes, love the TXP. I still have a couple of these, and they play great, but some of you might have seen on this particular one, I've got lead all over the place.
Yep.
Quality control back then, not great.
Whoa.
So I don't think I've ever had two identical weighted rackets like ever, and I've had a lot of them.
No, and I've been testing old rackets, and you guys think quality control is bad today. Oh my gosh, back then was super bad.
Yeah, but
super bad.
If you want to rewind a little bit,
yes,
right? We'll get back to the TXP and then the rackets that came later, but
let's look at the Arthur Ashe. Let's start.
Yeah, the head. This is the head edge. This was the racket, used and endorsed by the late great Arthur Ashe. Look at that super duper tiny head. This is like a standard size, I think. This was pre-mid-size, right? So like rackets like the original Wilson Ultra that had the detachable PWS at 3 and 9 would have been about the same size.
Still, is that made out of metal?
It's not. It's actually one of the first like graphite composite rackets.
Really?
But if you hit with it, it plays like wood.
Interesting. I know it's flexible, but it feels like metal.
It's super flexible. It's super flexible, and this shape, the shape of this head, which is not the same as the shape of what became the Prestige mold. This shape of head, from head, and the name Edge stayed in the line for a really long time.
Yep, I remember that.
Right? So, 1986 was when I started playing tennis, and one of my first rackets was a racket called the Head Composite Edge.
Oh, okay.
And it had a very, very similar shape, very similar mold, and it played extremely flexy, like zero power, super flexy.
They were all flexy. All the head rackets were
They were
flexy.
so soft, like they would cave in randomly.
Well, when you string it, yeah.
Yeah, but starting with the head edge,
I still think this feels like metal.
It does. It like these early transition from wood to newer materials rackets from a lot of different brands. Like they kind of look like wood. They kind of play a little bit like wood, but they're lighter than wood. So you think of like things like famously Dunlop Max 200G.
Totally.
Totally plays like that. Super flexible, super heavy, great feel. The Rossignol, F line, F200, F250, even F150. All those rackets, and the early Rossignol's actually really looked and played like wood with the same inverted bridge and everything.
Totally.
I got one in storage somewhere. But starting with this, the Edge becomes an important kind of like model name that stays with head all through the 80s because, like I said, when I first started playing tennis, not long after I had a composite edge, but then as you went up the line, the rackets got a little bit stiffer, a little bit heavier, and a little bit more powerful, right? So composite edge, there was a graphite edge, and then above that was the TX line. So what eventually led to the TXP, here's an example. This is a head TXE.
I've seen those before.
Right?
Yep.
And
they call it Edge, too.
And it's what it is a graphite edge TXE. So for everyone at home,
there you go.
Graphite edge TXE. There was a regular graphite edge that was non-TX that has slightly smaller head, slightly more flexible, but this was the one that we all wanted. Like all of us who played with heads at the time, before Prestige, the TXE was what we wanted to play with. And this still plays great today. Like it plays a little bit like a Pro Staff, like it plows through the ball. It's a lovely racket. But when Head could not use the Prestige name, and they already had this convention of naming things TX, which may be a reference to Twaron. Can't verify that unless we know people at Head back in the day.
Right.
But that TX nomenclature, there was a TXD.
Oh.
So there was a Director series.
Okay.
And the Director series was what was then oversized. So there was like a more elongated
I remember
head.
that snowshoe looking shoe.
Yeah.
Racket, I mean.
Yeah. So Head's always been very complicated about their naming stuff, right? So, they've got the edge thing, the director thing, they've got the composite thing, the graphite thing, and then they've got the TX thing. Like, you know, you can make like a, you know, crazy grid out of like all the possibilities, you know, of the way that Head would name their things. But
it's an Austrian thing.
Yeah, I guess it is. But the TXE kind of like sat on that kind of like, you know, border between kind of like, you know, the end of one Racket era for Head and the beginning of like a new one.
So what's the beginning?
I would say that the beginning
after this.
Yeah, this is kind of like where you start to see like kind of the prestige DNA begin to emerge.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So it comes in two ways. In Europe, oops.
We can just leave it down.
Yeah. In Europe, they get this.
I got it.
They get this. The Head Graphite Pro. And the Graphite Pro is specifically labeled mid plus.
That head looks definitely
on
bigger.
this row.
Yes.
Right? It looks a little bit like the 660 kind of size.
Yep.
Right? And again, I don't know exactly when this came out because this racket never made it to Singapore. This was like a Europe-only model.
I've never seen that in America.
Yeah. You know, this paint job, also great paint job. You know, wish they would still do stuff like this today.
Yeah, let's bring it up a little bit. These guys, because I've never seen this paint job. Bring it down a little so we can see the head. There you go. See how that looks in the throat? I've literally never seen that racket look that way before.
But back then, in the, you know, mid to late 80s, you know, Head loved putting, you know, the model name around the throat, right? With you know, with an underscore of some color. Like in this case, it's red. But at the same time, at around the same time, in the US, and therefore in Singapore, they released this Graphite Pro, which, now, you compare the two, they're very, very similar frames. They're not identical.
No,
they're not identical.
It's probably because it's softer. This looks a little smaller, but it might be because it's the coloring. That looks bigger.
Yeah. In Europe, you know, they got these like badass looking like black ones, right? And in the US, they were, you know, they were going for like brighter,
definitely,
you know, like non-traditional colors, right? This one was the one that stood out the most because it had this like, you know, turquoise with like the metal flake, you know, again, actually a very nice paint job. And, you know, this was the Graphite Professional, right? No TX designation. And, you know, this was the exact same era as the Prestige. They came out around the same year. And Head had them in the lineup at the same time.
I'd like to show you the grommets, how they're like falling.
Oh, yeah, this one's totally disintegrating.
But they're all doing that. They all do that.
Yeah. Also, interestingly, and you'll see this later also with the TXP, even though these were made in Austria, right, they all were, for the US market, they put a US flag sticker, right? And it's not just a sticker, it's actually, it's laminated, you can't peel it off.
Why is that? Why did they do that?
Because this was, you know, like sold by Head USA, right? And, you know, it was like 1987, 88, 89. Yep. You know, the height of the Cold War, you know, like America. So, yeah.
I think they had an office over here, you were telling me, right? Somebody was telling me they had an office here.
Oh, I didn't tell you that. Wasn't me. But this racket, if you're old enough, and I know you are, David Wheaton used this racket.
Oh, yeah, David Wheaton.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, servant volleyer. But, you know, this was very, very shortly, you know, kind of, you know, eclipsed
into here
by what we started this video with, the TXP. And as you can see, we'll flip it around. We got the flag. So, yeah, in this era, the US market rackets, you know, the Graphite Pro, there was also Composite Pro, The TXP, there was a TXM. They killed off the director
Yep.
line and they replaced it with the master line. So master became like
that.
a less elongated, kind of a wider head, kind of similar to what eventually would be the Pro Tour 280 kind of mold, but not exactly the same. Okay. So they were headed there.
Got it.
And then, from that point onwards, I wish we had an original European Brown Prestige Pro. That would be very nice to have on the table. But, from that point onwards, after the first 1 or 2 years of the Prestige's existence, Head managed to sort out their US market legal issues, and they were able to just, I think from about 1989 onwards, they could be Prestige all over the world. So then you start seeing the Prestige that we all know and love, the red, with the metal flake. This one is, early-ish, but it's part of the red, classic red Prestige. This one's made in Austria.
Yep.
Made in Austria. And this is one that head nerds call the Track Font Prestige Classic 600.
Or Star Trek.
Because it uses the same or very similar font that Star Trek does. Yeah, super nerdy. But the interesting thing is that this track font and the TXP play, for me, exactly the same. They have a very similar flex. They're, for today's standards, nice and soft, very comfortable. They plow through the ball a lot, which of course all rackets from this era almost all do. But you can generate quite a bit of spin with it still, which is pretty amazing.
It was pretty headlight unless you added that lead like you did on that.
Yeah, I added to this one because I think this one...
It needed more plow.
This one, I think, was originally a 4 5/8 grip, and I took off the original grip so it feel better in my hand. So, and then that messed up the balance, so then I had to rebalance everything. So, yeah, long story. But, that Prestige mold found its way into all kinds of different rackets not called Prestiges. So, we've got this one, which looks like a weird, dark bluish green Prestige. If you look at it,
it looks like this one actually, the Star Trek.
Yep, it looks like a track font. It's also made in Austria, and it has the exact same made in Austria and the exact same track font on the side. I've never seen any one of these.
I've never seen that racket
This
before.
is the only example that I've ever come across, and so I had to get it. And they called this one the Graphite Tour 600.
Where'd you get that? America?
Definitely in America.
Okay.
Might have been even in San Francisco.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the weird thing about this one is, some people are noticed no cap grommets.
Oh yeah, huh?
Right. So uncapped, and then in the throat they've got this,
dampening thing.
Dampening grommets. I haven't hit with this one in a very, very long time. This actually almost looks like
Pro Tour 280.
I got this racket like this. I've never restrung it. The stencil is on there when I got it. So I don't know if, what was this sold in a store in 1989? I have no idea.
Wow.
Yeah. So if
Did
anyone
you buy
knows,
it new?
tell us.
You bought it new with the strings on, or you bought it used?
No, I think I paid $10 for it, on the street or something.
Oh, no way. Maybe it's fake.
Yeah. But then after that, again, we don't have the examples here, so if,
We'll work with what we got.
Yeah. Everyone can go Google stuff. You also had with the same mold, this is not the same mold, this is a 660 mold.
It's a 660 mold.
Yeah. This is the Trisis, which had the vibration dampening system in the handle, which tended to get loose and then rattle around in there. So no one liked it, or at least like no one I knew liked it.
Yeah.
I certainly didn't like it.
It couldn't handle the many hits and would loosen up here. So you would actually hear rattling when you struck the ball.
Yeah. But from that original, Prestige 600 mold, you also had there was an Electro Pro.
Mm-hmm.
There was an Elite Pro.
I remember that. Yep.
You've got this Graphite Tour 600 thing. Like there were just so many variations, and it's so hard to track because like who's tracking all this stuff? Like this oddball Graphite Tour 600. Didn't even know that officially existed.
And when I was at the store, I worked at a smaller pro shop, and I remember them having about 5 models. When I went to a big pro shop, I swear there were like 9 or 10 or 11 models.
Yeah.
And they had names like obviously Elite, Master, Pro, and they came in like rainbow of colors.
Well, and then everyone knows, over the life, of the Prestige in the red paint job, especially, in the 90s, early aughts, 2000s, right? They kept the same paint job. It went through a couple of different name changes. The one I have here is the Prestige Classic 600. And this one says designed in Austria.
Made in Czech Republic.
Made in Czech Republic, exactly. These, to me, and I have a whole bunch of these because I played with these for a long time. They play similar but not the same as the originals. Like my Track Font Prestige and the TXPs play like they are identical, right? These guys were stiffer, not as whippy.
Oh.
I actually find the older ones whippier. But otherwise, it's the Prestige DNA. Like if you like the Prestige, even though it's not exactly the same, it's kind of close enough. And like I said, QC back then was all of the shops, so
My experience with these was that they sat on the wall. I might sell 1 or 2 a year, and we literally had to clearance them out at the end of the year or at the end of the term of the rackets. I guess I didn't get that customer where I was. I think it took like a pro tour player to play with these, maybe, or somebody like you who's a connoisseur of these rackets. And
I don't know. We were like 14-year-old kids playing with us in like 1987. So
probably shouldn't have been playing with these.
I
didn't sell many heads, just to be honest about it.
Back then, if you were a high-level junior, you were in a program that had a racket sponsor, and you were mostly either playing with Head or Wilson. And if you're playing with Head, you played with the TXP / Prestige, and if you were playing Wilson, you played Pro Staff. That was basically,
I played at the prestigious Golden Gate Park, which a lot of pro staffs were at.
But the cool thing is that like Head kind of like showed for the 25th anniversary of the Prestige that they could be like just as nerdy as some of the Prestige fans out there. So they released this 25th anniversary to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the launch of the Prestige. They released this limited edition. I don't know.
I think it's a 9-pack or 12.
It's a 9. It's a 9 or a 12.
Yeah.
Because there's 3 compartments.
Yeah.
There's 3 compartments. It's otherwise kind of like,
I think it's a 9.
Like a pretty standard tennis bag. There's,
very beautiful.
It's really good looking. It's got these semi-solid sides, so it holds its shape even with no rackets in it.
See that? Yeah, this has been. You've had this for 10 years, probably, right?
I want to say, it was about.
Yeah, because they don't make bags like this anymore, and they don't hold up like these.
It must have been
This is a great
whatever the
25th was.
Yeah, the 25th.
I know it's about 10 years old.
Yeah, and it's got the 25th badge on the side.
Yep.
Which is pretty cool.
Head.com. Look at this handle. Look at that handle. It says head.com on it, and it's a nice, sturdy handle too.
Yeah, mine's a little beat up because my cats got to it at some point in the last 10 years. And also as part of the 25 years, they also had
the 25th anniversary.
Anniversary paint job.
Yes.
Let me stress, it's a paint job. It's not
660.
Anything that you've seen on this table. This would have been after liquid metal. Yeah. Definitely after liquid metal.
Yep. Before or after the dot?
Yeah.
The flex point.
Definitely after. Okay,
look, it says
it's a UTEC. Yeah, it's a UTEC.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a UTEC. This is a prestige MP, of the UTEC era. And other than the incredibly cool paint job, which matches this bag, and also has a similar 25 years anniversary on the base of the throat. Very cool, but not a fan of the UTEC prestige MPs.
So let's sum it up a little bit here. They couldn't use prestige name, so they used a bunch of other different names, and then they were finally able to do it in 1987.
No, like the prestige came out around 87.
Okay.
So,
as the prestige?
In Europe. It launched in Europe first.
So that means it
and in 87, it launched as the TXP in the US.
So probably along the lines of 1989 is when they could use the name?
Here? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right around then was when they could kind of unify, the paint jobs and the racket lines and that was a great time. That late 80s through the early 90s, that was a great time for these classic rackets to come out and also some really memorable players that played with some of them. Goran, obviously.
Yep.
Yep. We all remember, but also Henri Leconte.
Oh yeah. Totally.
He went through a couple of different head rackets, but I think I associate him with kind of the 280.
Sure. Sure.
Because that's I think something, either that racket or something similar to it was a similar paint job. It was certainly dark blue. Is what he used against Mats Wilander in the 1988 French Open final.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. And then you also had supremely talented another lefty. I'm not lefty. Hisham Arazi.
Okay. Don't know that dude.
From Morocco.
Don't know that dude.
Go look up clips of his old matches on YouTube. Hisham Arazi.
Hisham Arazi. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
He super cool dude. Play with a bandana. Kind of like a
Marcelo Rios.
He was like a Moroccan combination of John McEnroe and Marcelo Rios.
Okay.
Single-handed backhand, lefty, all court game, just shot maker, and he was not a big guy.
Okay.
Amazing player, and he was a prestige guy.
Nice.
He was a red prestige guy. So
when somebody says prestige, head prestige, what's the number one thing you think about?
It's the red paint job.
Okay. How about play-wise?
It's the nicest, most comfortable, plushest, hit through the ball, tons of feel. There's just never been anything else like it. And, and I love the Pro Staff too, and I used that for many years too.
Okay.
But they don't play it at all.
Got it.
Okay. So,
So when I think of Prestige, I was like, no power. Ain't gonna help you. Hardest racket to play with.
I disagree.
That also means I'm not good enough to play with one. So
no, you just need a longer swing. You just need a longer swing because
I need to move my feet. Like I need to get in shape.
You know, with the swing weight of these things, you know, you prepare early, longer swing, just absolutely just plows through the ball. I mean, again, game has changed, so you know, if you have a whippy, kind of forehand and you really want to do the windshield wiper, can you do it? Yeah, you can.
More continental,
but it's not really meant.
Yeah.
Meant to do that. But I mean, remember, Thomas Muster played with these rackets.
Oh yeah.
And he was one of the first, one of the early examples of, the modern forehand.
Right. No, this is true, but he was a big dude.
Well, yeah. I mean,
sure. Big dude. All right, Eugene, thank you so much for showing us the way in the progression of prior to Prestige and then into Prestige and then kind of into a little bit more of like a modern, semi-modern Prestige. And thanks for bringing in that bag. That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's maybe we should hit with all these.
Always, it's always good to have a reason to, bring this guy out since I don't actually use a tennis bag when I play tennis.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. You just carry him underneath the arm.
No, I just use a regular backpack, man.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. Guys, thank you for watching Tennis Spin, where we put our spin on your tennis.